What's up, guys? Nelson Dellis here for another episode of The Mind Show. And before I talk about my guest, I want to quickly thank my sponsor, ExtremeMemoryChallenge.com. And it's a project that I'm really involved with, where we're trying to get a million test takers to take this memory test that we designed. Very easy, very quick, free, very minimal commitment. All you'd be doing is taking a memory test and helping out with our research. The goal is to find people with exceptional long-term memories, and with that we can genetically test them and hopefully figure out how to cure a lot of these cognitive disabling diseases like Alzheimer's, dementia, Parkinson's, and so on. So please check it out, ExtremeMemoryChallenge.com. I think we're at about just over 10,000 test takers, which is great, but we're trying to get a million. The more people we get, the better mapping of the brain and memory, long-term memory of the world that we can get. So do that. Now, our guest today is a master of one of these things. So years ago, before I was into memory, I was solving these things pretty quickly, not as quick as him. This was kind of what my thing was. So actually in my memory system, my number is 12. I am 12. My image for that number is me. And my object is a Rubik's Cube for that reason. So I'm very passionate about the process of getting good at speed cubing. And so today we have a speed cubing champ named Anthony Brooks. I met him last summer in LA when we were shooting a show together, and he is fast. And really fast. And he's an all-around cool, super cool guy. So let's dive into it. Really excited about this episode. He's a fascinating guy, and I'd love to hear him talk about the cube like it's no big thing. So here we go. Hello and welcome everyone to another episode of The Mind Show with me, Nelson Dellis. I'm your host, U.S. memory champion, and today we have a speed cubing champion, Rubik's Cube champion, Anthony Brooks. Thanks for being on the show. How you doing?
I'm good. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, man. So you and I, we met back this past summer, I think, when we were filming for a show that's hopefully going to go on air soon. What was it called? Superhuman? Yeah. I don't know if we're allowed to even say that word, but yeah. So I got really excited when I saw that you could do a full Rubik's Cube solve in a single Snapchat video. That really excited me because the Snapchat video is not very long. So ever since then, I mean, we've talked on and off, but I've always been interested in cubing. That's actually where I started getting into like memory stuff. And then
Rubik's Cube?
Yeah. I mean, I was in a physics lab, and we would just do random nerdy things. And one of the things we were like, let's solve Rubik's Cubes. And I learned about the memory that goes into blind solves, and then I dropped the Rubik's Cube and just did memory stuff. So, yeah. Anyways, I'd love to start just by kind of getting into how you started. Like, what was your first experience with the cube? How did you get interested into it?
Yeah, pretty similar to your story, it sounds like. I went to a very math and science-oriented high school, and this was back right around when The Pursuit of Happiness came out with Will Smith.
Oh, yeah.
Did you see that movie?
Yeah, I literally watched that clip where he solves the cube just a week ago. I love it.
Okay, yeah. So that clip kind of got people all across North America out at Walmart buying Rubik's Cubes, going on YouTube, learning how to solve it. And next thing you know, there's a big Rubik's Cube craze at my school. Literally dozens of people. Like, it was my freshman year of high school. And I remember I showed up after Christmas break, and I had seen a couple of kids playing with Rubik's Cubes, but I don't remember anybody solving it.
Okay.
And then we show up first day. We have like an hour break before school starts. And everybody just kind of walks around mingling. And everywhere I went, people were solving Rubik's Cubes. So that kind of threw me off a little bit. And I didn't immediately jump into the whole cubing thing. But a few months later, I had a long road trip to run a half marathon.
Okay.
And it was 10 hours stuck on a bus. We were really bored. There's only so much, Game Boys you can play in that amount of time.
Yeah.
One of my buddies was the fastest at my school, and I've always been super competitive, so He taught me, a few other people how to solve the cube. And then it was about 6 months later that I competed in my first competition. And that was really my introduction to this whole world of speed cubing.
Nice. And so how fast was your friend at that time, say, to solve?
He was under a minute, which I thought was pretty damn good. Yeah. And it's really interesting to me that cubing is one of those things that even if you just pick it up and learn how to solve a cube and you can do it in 5 minutes, that's going to really impress 99% of people you meet.
Yeah.
So I don't know why I've spent so much time trying to get any better than that, but hopefully there's some benefit there.
I have the same issue. When I first started memorizing decks of cards, I was obsessed with trying to do it in front of people to show them, and I would just try to do it as fast as possible with one look. And that's impressive. I'm talking about like 40 seconds, 50 seconds, but I'd make mistakes all the time because I'd be so nervous, and they'd be like, that's not impressive. You can't memorize the deck. But then, so I learned that there's like a level where you can go slow enough, but it's slow for me, but fast enough for them to be still impressed, and you get them all right,
Exactly. Yeah. And something that I kind of grapple with is that solving a cube in 20 seconds is quite fast, a lot faster than 2 or 3 minutes. So 20 seconds is fast, and 15 seconds is fast. But within this Rubik's Cube community, world class is really under 10 seconds. That's insane. Even if I solve the cube in 7, 8 seconds, a lot of times people will be counting out loud. It'll be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. They tell me it's 15 seconds. It's hard for people to really notice the difference between 9 seconds like that, and even 19 seconds.
Right. And what's the current world record? Is it like 4 point something?
Yeah, the world record dipped under 4 seconds this last year, under 5 seconds.
Okay.
It was 4.9 for a while, and then in November, it dropped to 4.74.
Okay.
And then in December, somebody lowered it to 4.73.
Oof. All right. That's crazy. And are these averages, or is that like a single one-off shot?
Yeah, that's a single solve. So difference between single and average is really that single times you can skip steps and get lucky. I don't really know if that happens with like decks of cards when you memo, because I don't think you can skip anything. You can get a nice setup, right? But
right, no, they don't do that. There have been cases where like a deck wasn't shuffled, so you get like the automatic, ace to king, ace to king, ace to king. But in that case, they know that it wasn't shuffled because when you reconstruct it, it's too close, so they redo it. Obviously, you don't even have to look at it. But the thing is even if it was, say, that fresh deck order, ace to king, all the suits, and you maybe move 2 or 3 cards, that still would be hard because it would probably be even harder because you'd suddenly have to figure out, without memorizing where those cards were switched or something. I don't know. And then just because there'd be so much of a pattern, if you tried to memorize it, it would probably be a headache. But so they don't really run into that issue. They usually just shuffle a shitload of times, and then that's good enough,
Yeah.
Okay, so yes, I guess so. Let's talk about how people what competitions are like, because I guess most people don't maybe know what the average score is and different kinds of competitions and events they have. What's a competition like?
Yeah, so there's a pretty wide spectrum of competition environments. My first competition was at a library in Cincinnati, Ohio. Okay. This was in 2008, and cubing, it felt pretty big at the time, but it's a lot bigger now. Back then, I'd say the average competition had about 60 or so competitors.
Okay.
But right now, we're looking at probably about 100 competitors on average at these competitions. Wow. I'm competing here in Vancouver tomorrow, and there's going to be 150 competitors.
Okay, cool.
So every competition, there'll be different events. In total, there are about 15 different events, ranging from the standard cube to smaller versions. This is a 2x2. Then, it gets bigger, 4x4, 5x5, all the way up to a 7x7.
Yeah.
Then there are a few different shapes, like a pyramid cube and stuff like that.
Okay.
So generally at competitions, there'll be a set list of events that are held, and there'll be a few rounds of each event. So going off the standard cube, I'd say tomorrow in Vancouver, most people will be solving the cube in under 45 seconds.
Okay.
I would say it'll probably take about a 25-second average to advance to the second round.
Got it. Okay.
Then probably about a 12-second average to make it to the finals.
So there's like 3 rounds, and then you get, 5 attempts per round?
Yep.
Okay. Got it.
5 attempts. Your fastest solve and your slowest solve are thrown out, and you take the average of the middle 3 times.
Cool. And then do you... Sorry, go ahead.
I was saying you can screw one up.
Okay.
In competition, there's... actually, thinking back, when I started cubing, if a piece popped out of the cube, which used to happen a lot more back then because the hardware wasn't as good,
Yeah.
if it popped out, they'd give you a redo. Now what happens is you don't get to redo the solve, but that'll count as your worst solve.
Your drop.
And then tossing out your best solve means that if you get insanely lucky on one, it's not gonna,
skew the average. Yeah,
exactly.
That's crazy. And then, so who mixes it up, or does everyone get the same mix? Is it done very fairly, or is it all random?
So we have a computer program that will generate a totally random scramble that everyone will get. So there'll be designated scramblers that the way it works is there'll be a piece of paper with a competitor's name on it, the event. It's their scorecard where they write all the times down.
Okay.
And they'll place their puzzle solved on the card, and then a scrambler will get that. They'll follow the string of letters that, dictates
Code,
how you should scramble it, and then everybody has the same starting spot.
Got it. Okay. That's cool. And then
I assume it's the same in memory competitions, right? Will they have the same like shuffled deck, or
sometimes? I mean, in the World Championships, everybody just randomly shuffles. The thing with cards is, I guess, I don't know how to compare it to Rubik's Cube, but they're all as equally complex when you shuffle enough, I think. But in the U.S. Championship, the finals is on stage, and they've given us all the same decks to memorize because we have to say them in order, and we're pulling from the same memory of the same deck, so it needs to be the same. But the other one at the World Championships, you're just memorizing as fast as you can, as fast as alone, at your own table. So, but
and I guess everybody has. I mean, you have different codes for the pairs of cards.
Right.
So even if you have the same shuffle deck, it's not really gonna.
Yeah, exactly. I remember, like in 2013 or something, one of the decks, I didn't get it right. I missed a card, but it started off so good, and for me, so good means it was like an image of me, an image of me climbing, and it was like the perfect story. It was like super designed for me to memorize, and if someone else had gotten that, maybe it would have been their worst images or something, in sequence. So there's no way to really tell that. So that's why I don't think it's as done the same,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
With cubing, are we there?
Yeah. Well, go ahead.
Okay, cool. A little bit of an echo.
That's cool.
Yeah, with cubing, most people use a very similar method. So even if we use slightly different algorithms, the start of the solve is almost always the same idea. You can do it a little bit differently, but that's part of the reason why it's really important that we do have the same randomized scramble.
Okay.
Because each scramble makes a huge difference at the very beginning of the solve.
I see.
The middle and the end are influenced by what you do at the beginning, so it's hard to end up with the same ending of each solve, but the beginning's what's really important.
Got it. And then before you do your timed solved, can you look at the cube, or it's just timed as you start to look at it?
Yeah, we get up to 15 seconds to look at the cube before starting.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. And then and this we can segue into the strategy, but I guess at that point is everyone starting with looking for that cross, that first layer cross?
Yeah, exactly. Okay. Just about everybody. There are a couple other methods that don't start with that cross, but I would say 99% of people at these competitions are all looking for that cross.
Okay.
But then something that is kind of interesting about my solving when I compete is I bet you learned how to solve the cube starting with that white cross.
Yeah, I did.
Yeah.
Because the Rubik's logo is on the white. You've got to start there.
That's fair. And, everybody teaches that in videos online. So people have ended up using white. But when I was taught, I didn't learn from a video. My friend taught me. Okay. And he said you can start with whatever color you want.
Okay.
So I ended up doing blue.
Oh, weird.
Which means... yeah.
Feels wrong.
And what's interesting about it is it inevitably either gives me... the variance is there, but it'll either give me an advantage or a disadvantage. Okay. Because everyone else is using white. So if white has really bad scrambles for their cross at the beginning, and blue is good, I have an advantage.
I see, yeah.
But then there are times where after a round, people are talking, and I hear everybody will be going on and on about how great the scrambles were.
Yeah.
And
you're like,
I'm kicking myself.
Interesting. So what's the opposite of the blue side then? Is
green.
It orange? Green. Okay, so green is your last. That's your... Well, yeah, tell me what's the very basic way to solve it, and then tell me how you solve it. I mean, I've done it, but I wanted to hear it from you.
Sure. So basic way is starting with a cross, and I do blue. Right. So there's my blue cross on the bottom. After this, I'm sure you put in the corners of the bottom layer.
That's right. Yeah.
And then probably the edges in the middle layer.
Yeah.
Okay. So going through that right now, I'll show you what it kind of looks like. There's 1, 2, and you'll notice I'm doing a lot of moves for this. So there's 3, 4. So that was maybe 30 moves to solve the bottom layer of the cube right here.
And you also didn't really look at it while you're doing. You kind of know it's really cool to watch you do it. It's just like pulling triggers and stuff. But I have a really good sense of, I think, where everything is, right?
Yeah, and especially if I'm using a basic method. The method I use, which I'll get into, requires looking at many more pieces at once.
Okay.
So if I'm reducing it to just the basics, I know where everything is.
Yeah, of course.
So now when I put in this second layer, that's 8 moves there, 8 moves there, 8 more, 8 more, and now I have 2 layers of the cube.
Yeah, nice.
Then from here, the most basic method that most people will learn on YouTube requires about, I'd say, 8 steps to solve the last layer from this point.
Yeah.
And most world-class speed cubers are doing the last layer in 2 steps.
Oh, wow.
So the step I would use here is first to make it all green on top. So I recognize this pattern and do those moves to make the green side come together. And then the last step is just to position the remaining pieces of the top layer, and the cube's solved.
Nice. You make it look so smooth and simple. That's good.
Basically what I've been doing this entire last year, which some people think I'm crazy for, is developing this conceptual system called ZB.
ZB, okay.
Now, this is something... I have a feeling you'll like this because it's all about memory.
Okay.
Basically, ZB is a system where I start with the cross, just like normal. But from here, first off, instead of solving the corners of the bottom layer and then the edges of the middle layer, I do those at the same time.
Okay.
Which is pretty standard for advanced speed cubing.
Yeah, I think I tried to get into that. I mean, I got somewhat far and then I stopped it. Yeah. Yeah.
It just takes practice to kind of figure out how everything works, because it's much easier to do this intuitively than it is to learn algorithms for it.
I remember that. I mean, it took a while to get that intuition, but once you got it, you're like, oh, it slides in this way. It made a lot of sense once you got it.
Yeah, it does. So I'm going through, and at this point, I've solved 3 of the 4 slots of the bottom layer. And basically what I mean is, if I set it up here, I've got blue on bottom, and this is done, this is done, and this is done. But the 4th slot in the bottom layer isn't done yet.
Okay.
So what ZB does is, once I've solved 3 of the 4 slots, I've learned 800 algorithms to solve it in only 2 steps from this point.
The rest of the cube.
The rest of the cube in 2 algorithms.
Okay.
So for this, first what I'm going to do is I'm going to solve this final slot, and I'm going to make sure that I have a green cross on top when I do that. So that case is that. So now I have 2 layers done, and I have a cross on top.
Yep.
Now, the gist of what ZB is first orienting this green cross, and then I've memorized every position that I could possibly have at this point, so I can finish it in 1 algorithm, which is an additional 500 cases. So when I see this, I recognize this specific pattern, and I know to do that, and the cube's done.
The cube's done. Wow. And so did you invent that?
So
or it's inspired by... Okay.
Yeah. The concept has been around since 2002.
Okay.
And there have been a few people before me who have attempted to learn the system. There are a couple people who did complete most of the system. As I said, there are 2 steps to ZB, and the most important one is those 500 patterns at the very end.
I see. Okay.
And the people who have learned those 500 patterns haven't been very fast with it, because there's so much to recall. And one of the big issues was that the algorithms weren't very finger trick friendly, so you couldn't execute them very quickly.
Okay.
And a year and a half ago, I met a guy named Jabari. Jabari had started cubing about a year before, and he was living in South Africa for a year.
Okay.
And while he was in South Africa, I think he had just finished high school in the States, and his family was living there for a year, and he wasn't in school. So I think, from my understanding, is his family basically said, learn stuff, be productive, but do what you want.
Okay.
And Jabari started developing this ZB system in terms of finding faster algorithms.
Okay.
So when I met Jabari, he had finished learning those 500 algorithms, and that kind of inspired me to get into it and try and make those algorithms even better.
Okay.
So he and I have worked together, and at this point, we have very fast algorithms for all of these cases, and I've been developing the previous step to be just as good. Okay. And the idea behind this is, ultimately, I think this could be a better system than what we're using right now. It requires one less step, and even though there's a lot more to memorize and a lot more to recognize and execute, it's a lot harder, basically. It's probably 20 times harder than the next most advanced system everybody's using.
Wow.
But I think after a few years of practice, it'll be better.
Got it.
So I just finished learning this system, and right now I'm trying to put it into use. And when I'm in competition, if I get good cases for this system, I get really fast times.
Wow, okay.
But if I get bad cases, it's hard to post, my best averages in competition. So right now there's definitely a trade-off, and I'm working to try and bring my average time down
with that
over the next years.
So,
yeah.
And so you said you have to memorize. Well, learn means memorize, right? Well, first is to memorize, and then it's to be able to do it without thinking at some point.
Exactly.
But how many things is 800? Or
800.
800. And how long are those sequences, those algorithms? Average.
On average, yeah, about 12 moves on average.
Okay. Interesting. And so, next question, as a memory athlete, how are you memorizing them? Is it more of just like, do you have a system for that? Or are you just like sitting there doing the same set of moves, getting muscle memory, or how are you doing it?
Yeah. So initially, I grouped the algorithms into similar cases.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So that every time I get a case that looks kind of like this, I know that I know an algorithm for it every time.
Okay, that's clever.
So that's the first step, to group everything. Then once I've grouped them, I just drill the algorithms over and over and over again.
Yeah.
But that kind of starts with, because there are so many, it's hard to get them all in your muscle memory right away.
Yeah, for sure.
So I'll break the algorithms down and try and understand what's happening.
Okay.
So generally you can track a few pieces and see where they're going. So I'll try and, I don't translate it into letters like I would with a lot of memory stuff for blindfolded solving.
Okay.
But in my head, it's almost like I come up with a sort of story of what's happening with the pieces.
And the moves, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I kind of see, okay, these go there, that goes here, they come back. And once I've got that down, I'll just drill them over and over again until they start to become muscle memory.
Yeah.
And then once they're in my muscle memory, which they all are at this point. At this point, all of them are muscle memory. I don't have to think about them when I'm executing them.
Got it.
But what I'm having to think a lot about right now is recognizing the case that I have and associating it with that specific algorithm.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Okay.
So I might have the algorithm down where I can do it without thinking about it, but I have to know when I see this, it's that algorithm that I have to do.
Right. And
that's what's difficult, right?
You have to recognize, and this is basically where the stickers are, right? Like when you see, okay. And from what it sounds like, I remember the one where I had to remember like the shape of things was the yellow on the last layer. One looked like a fish, and then one was like a little box with a little tail. Those are the things that are, exactly. Yeah. There's the Jesus fish. Yeah. That was like the good one. If I had that, I was ready I could make the whole thing yellow on top.
Yeah, exactly.
So is it that you got to kind of come up with like a cue for like, oh, that's this case. This looks like, do you have stuff like that where it's like, this reminds me of this is the grandma move or something?
Yeah, it wasn't until I had memorized maybe 600 of these that I realized it might have been helpful to name these things.
Oh, yeah.
Because I think...
Interesting.
I don't know, I'd like to hear your 2 cents on this, but I have just been brute forcing it where I see the position of the colors, and it's very abstract. I just see the position, and I need to know the moves. But I was thinking, if I had called this, I don't know, train...
Right.
And I had written train down next to the algorithm. I was wondering if that would help with association. I think it might.
Yeah, I would have done that. I would have first tried to keep the words as small as possible. Like a syllable or something. Like train is good enough. But, like mom or shoe or whatever. All these like very simple things that you can quickly say in your head without losing too much time when you recognize it. But yeah, I think that would have definitely helped in terms of. But you'd also have to, in the way that the positioning of the cubes and the stickers looks, somehow relate it to a train or a shoe. But that can be as stretched out as you want. It may look nothing like a train, but you say like, oh, there's like a run of yellow on the top here that reminds me of a train track, and that's good enough to be like, oh, that's the train one. Interesting. So I'm guessing in competitions like tomorrow, are you going to use this, or do you still kind of fall back on what will get you the good times for sure? Yeah.
So like I mentioned earlier, I grouped all of these cases.
Yeah.
So there are 7 general groups of cases. And I've found that the ones I've been using the longest, the ones I learned first, I'm much stronger with right now than the ones I've learned towards the tail end. So of the 7 groups, this is a good conversation for me to have right now. I need to figure this out. In competition, I've been trying to use 5 of the 7 groups.
Okay.
But there are 2 groups that 2 of those 5 that sometimes still slow me down.
Okay.
So I think it might be good for me to use 3 of the 7 tomorrow.
Yeah.
There's a guy coming up from Seattle. His name's Kevin, and he's a world champion cuber in the larger cubes.
Okay.
He's very fast at the standard cube, but his specialty is the 6x6, 7x7.
Okay.
And it's probably in my best interest to not use this full system going up against Kevin tomorrow.
Got it. So
thinking through it out loud right now, I think I'll definitely use about half of the system, but now I get into the issue. If I'm only going to use half of the system, then it's probably in my best interest to not use the first half.
Oh, right.
So it's really a case-by-case basis. And in general, I'm pretty good at just going with the flow of the solve and doing whatever feels right at the time, which usually works out pretty well. But I just know that there is definitely doing what I'm doing right now is slowing me down in general than if I had this system refined.
Sure.
So actually last month I was in South Africa for a couple of competitions.
Yeah.
And after winning those, I actually bumped up to first place in the world rankings for most competitions won.
No way. Oh, yeah, I think I saw that. Congratulations. Yeah.
Thanks. So what I'm thinking right now, I have 4 more competitions lined up in the next month and a half.
Okay.
But I think once I've got through those, I'm probably going to take a break from competing until the World Championship this summer.
Okay.
With the idea being that I can finally stop fighting this constant struggle between mastering what I'm using and also falling back on what I was using before just so I can compete in competition. It's difficult.
Yeah, I feel you. That's the same place I find myself constantly in memorization because, I'm like, okay, I got to come up with a new system. I have a new system for like cards and numbers, and I'm halfway in, halfway out. Like in competitions, I still use the old one, but I keep doing competitions, so then I don't really get time to try the new one. But I don't want to do the new one in competition because I'll get a slower score, So I got to like stop and not compete and just do some serious practice and then show up when I'm ready,
I feel your pain.
Yeah. So what are some of your records? I'd love to know. So like, what's your best, I don't know what to aim for. Like, I guess what's your fastest time, your average time, like for the 3x3?
So for 3x3, which is definitely my favorite event, my fastest single time is 6.4 seconds.
Wow.
And my fastest average time is 7.9.
Okay. Nice.
So the idea behind what I'm learning right now is that I could, if I really wanted to beat my best single time, I could stick to the previous system I was using and just keep drilling it and competing until I got really lucky in competition, skipped a step, and got a 5.
Yeah.
Which would be great, but I'm more concerned with my average time.
Okay.
And when I got my 7.9 average, when was this? It was about 1.5 years ago now. So I haven't beat it in a while. At the time, it was really good, like top 10 in the world. It was a much faster average than I usually got in competition at the time.
Okay.
But learning this new system has brought when I do well with ZB, I get a lot of 6s and 7s.
Nice. Okay.
It's just, I get bad cases, I get 9s and 10s.
So bad. That's still amazing, but yeah.
I guess where I'm going with this right now, my goal is to have this system more or less mastered within the next 2 years.
Okay.
And once I have it mastered, I'm extremely confident I can get mid-7 averages, no problem.
Nice.
But it's a matter of getting to that point. And I mean, what new system are you working on with memorization? Is it like memorizing 3 things together in one image instead of 2, or? Kind
of. I mean, the top card memorizer right now is Alex Mullen. He's an American guy. He was out there when we were filming the show. Yeah, and he so he's getting his decks of cards in like 16 seconds, which is insane. No one's even close to that. I mean, the next guy is Simon, who's a German. He's getting 20 seconds. But the thing he's doing is and people have done this for maybe 10 years now, is pairs of cards being one thing, which that in itself is a big task to learn. It's 2,700 images. You got to know every possible combination of cards. And he does something slightly different, but you know, I've been trying to do that for a while, and I set up something where I kind of had all those images, but I didn't learn them, and then I saw how he was doing it, and I'm like, well, maybe I should do that, but it's kind of far away from what I've been doing for 7 years. So I'm trying to find a way, and I think I found it, where I can kind of keep doing the system that I do, just amplified to this 2-card pair thing. But it's tough because I see him and I'm like, well, he's the fastest in the world. Maybe I should just do what he's doing.
Lost you there. I don't know if you can hear me.
Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Oh, okay, you're back.
Okay, yeah. No, I was saying, so Alex is doing it one way, and you're like, well, maybe I should just do it that way because it's proven to work. But then I'm like, well, I'm so good at my way, maybe I should just make a version of mine that's similar to his, but kind of my own. It's complicated, especially when you've been doing something for so long the same way, and it's fast enough, right? Like, yeah. What am I really trying to do? Like, shave 5 seconds off? I mean, who cares except for me?
Exactly.
But it's important, and so I'm still working on it. What's so you're saying the good average would be like 7.5 and mid-7s. What is that world record average?
Yeah, world record average is 6.5.
Okay, wow. All right, so we're talking like
there's a guy. Yeah, there's a guy. His name's Felix. He's kind of the Alex of the cube world.
Okay.
And the system he uses isn't ZB, although So there are lots of different variants of these speed solving techniques. And what Felix does is, instead of mastering a system completely, he learns the best stuff from each variation, and then depending on what he gets in the solve, he uses that.
Oh, man.
Which is great. I mean, that's really good. And I do that too, to a certain extent. But for some reason, I just really want to master this system fully. I think there's something kind of beautiful almost about knowing this really advanced system and being able to use it every time. It's more fun for me. So
yeah. Well, that's part of it, right? It's like, yeah, you want to get the end result, which is faster times, but it's also kind of mastering it in your own way that you're proud of, and it's kind of like you kind of help figure it out. So that's kind of special if you can master. Everybody's going to want to do your created system, you know?
Yeah, exactly. And you know, I've been so concerned about the speed of my solves for, it's coming up on 9 years now that I've been solving Rubik's cubes, and I think when you focus on the end result, getting faster times, improving your world ranking, it puts pressure on you in competition. And I know there have been many times where I could have got faster times in competition, but I put a lot of pressure on myself to try and maintain that ranking. Right. And it's stressful. It's hard. And after doing this for 9 years and constantly trying to maintain a top 20 in the world ranking, it's difficult. So I'm finding a lot more enjoyment out of mastering this system rather than focusing on my times right now.
Got it. And so what's next for you? What are you trying to do? You do this for full time? Is this your profession?
Well, I'm still in school right now.
Okay.
So all of this travel and everything that I've been doing, it's every weekend for me. I've been living that Tuesday, Thursday class schedule life for a couple of years now.
Okay. What are you studying?
Sorry?
What are you studying?
Business. I'm doing a econ business administration double major, and right now what I have going on. So I'm mastering this system and trying to step back from competitions for a little while.
Yep.
And in the process, I'll be focusing on school, and I do shows with the Cube that are kind of twofold. They're either educational or of the entertainment variety.
Cool.
And I have some different shows and talks that I've put together over the years, but I guess this next year I'm trying to refine these further, start pushing that a bit more, because I've been getting gigs when I can, but when I'm competing every other weekend, I don't have a lot of time to do that. So this next year, I'm going to try and put myself in good position to make this a full-time thing once I graduate.
Very cool. Yeah, it's a cool thing, and people are fascinated by the cube world. I think you're in a good space. How can people learn more about you? You have a website?
Yeah, brookscubing.com.
Brookscubing.com, and then follow you. What's your handles and stuff?
Yeah, Brooks Cubing for everything, but I mostly post on Instagram, so that's the best bet.
Got it. I'll put that information below. One last thing I got to ask you, because I think it's the coolest friggin' picture. Probably you think the same. You rotated in your cover or your picture, but I don't remember the rapper, but you're on stage, and it's like in front of an audience, and some rapper's just like out of his mind, and you're just like tossing the Rubik's Cube away like you just solved it. What was that?
Yeah, so there's this rapper called Logic.
Logic.
He's getting really big right now. A lot of people haven't heard him, but I like his music. If you like rap, he's very lyrics oriented, which I'm into. So I had heard his music a few years ago, and in 2015, I met him at a big music festival in New York.
Okay.
And we hit it off because of the whole cube connection. He's always posting on social media about Rubik's Cubes. He's a cuber himself.
Oh, okay. I was going to ask, could he solve it?
Yeah,
okay.
So that was kind of the connection. And then I'll give you like a 2-minute version of the story, but I went to one of his concerts in Dallas last year, and I thought about reaching out before the concert, but I had a lot going on. I actually had a Rubik's Cube competition that same day. So I just showed up to the concert. He didn't know I'd be there. But mid-song at the concert, he sees me in the crowd. Okay. And that was pretty cool in and of itself, because he kind of he did a double take, and my brother was with me. He's like, dude, he just noticed you. I was like, yeah, that's cool. Then mid-song, he's pointing at me, and people around me in the crowd are like, who's this guy? So he walks around, he's smiling and looking at me throughout the solve. He finishes the solve, and he yells at the stagehands to turn on the lights, and he's like, Anthony, is that Anthony motherfucking Brooks? And I was like, yeah, man, how's it going? And we started having a conversation in the middle of the concert. Yeah. And I had a Rubik's Cube with me. So he's like, toss the cube up here. So I toss it up on stage. He's mixing it up. And during his concert sometimes, he'll do a little cube demo where he gets there's a background with a Rubik's Cube, and he'll solve it and music will be playing. Oh, nice. Well, instead of doing it himself that time, he tells his 6'9" security detail to lift me up onto the stage. So I'm hoisted up, placed on the stage, and yeah, I did the whole thing. He mixed it up for me, and there's a big countdown. He asked me, he challenged me to solve it in less than 15 seconds, and I did it in 7 seconds.
Yeah, of course.
Actually, when I talked about skipping a step in competition to get a really fast time, I don't know what it is. I guess I'm lucky. But for whatever reason, whenever I'm in a really big moment, when I was on Good Morning America, when I was on Good Day New York, when I was up on stage with Logic, I just keep skipping that last step.
Oh, you get those good cases.
Insanely fast times. So I solved it, like, I don't know, it was like a really hyped up moment, you know, I'm like dancing around on stage, toss the cube up in the air, they snap that photo, and it was a really cool experience.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, it's an epic photo. All the like reactions in the setting, it's like, you couldn't ask for a better one for like your branding, you know? That's awesome.
Right.
Cool story. Nice. Well, good luck tomorrow. Thanks so much for taking the time. I'd love to, privately, we can talk more about strategies and maybe we can talk about memory a little more. But I hope to see you somewhere. We cross paths somewhere. We're on very different planes, but somehow they kind of collide somewhere, you know?
Yeah.
But yeah, good luck tomorrow, man. Thanks for your time. Well, I'll share your info below and I'll let you know when the video's up.
Awesome. It's been fun.
Cool, man. Take it easy.